What is up, Golden Frying Pan people? Welcome back to the kitchen. I hope you guys are having a good week. Today is the first of the 7 Deadly Sin series that I want to do. Realized that I didn't really do a great job of it whenever talking about it, but we're going to start off with greed. I feel like greed is a pretty easy one, and I chose Buckshot Roulette for that because I figured that that would be a good starting point. Something nice and easy. I'm sure I've even talked about this in the past, and I wanted to start by saying yes to the double or nothing, because I think that was smart or something. I don't know. But basic. What? We're still going with this board? Okay, whatever. I haven't played this in. It's not been too long, has it? Regardless. Hope you guys are having a good week. I have a set. Not necessarily a schedule, but an actual discussion for what is... Oh my gosh, I forgot to... Okay, sorry, I'm looking up what the actual definition of greed is. The first two results are woke and fascist. Cool, okay. Let's just see. So, let me make sure I'm doing this right. Yeah. Greed is an excessive desire to acquire or possess more than one needs or deserves, especially with respect to material wealth. So, what was it, 2 and 2? Something like that. That's the actual definition of greed. And obviously, it makes sense. I feel like greed of all of the 7 deadly sins has probably got to be the one that is, generally the most familiar, and it's easy to diagnose, right? It's definitely a very prominent problem in at least America, but probably the world at large. I mean, greed is a well-known fact. Everyone talks about, facing the greed that they talked about in the Bible, all that good stuff. What? I was on the second shell. Did I rack the first shell? Whatever. Okay. So greed is something that we're all very well familiar with. You don't need to hear the definition to know what greed is. It's something that is kind of inherently a part of our, well, not to be too like, oh, capitalism or anything like that. But it's just a part of what we live. You need to have stuff, even whenever you're not necessarily talking about money. As humans, we like to have things. Oh, this is it. This is it for him. We like to have things, right? And there's nothing really wrong with wanting to have things, right? Because I feel like that's pretty natural. Yeah. It's pretty natural to want things, right? That's not necessarily a terrible thing, and having things is definitely looked up upon. I was trying to say like the opposite of looked down upon. It's looked up to. It's good to have things. We want to have things. We especially want to have nice things, and there's nothing really wrong with that, I wouldn't say. It's not a problem to want to be able to have a house or friends or family or money, because after all, it's a little bit difficult to be happy if you are freezing and starving and there's so many cool things around you and you can never have any of them, and that's not great, right? And it's something that I've actually seen, well, at the very least, I know that Sir, I won't say his name, Mr. Live, if you will, has talked about in the past, and has talked about greed being a good thing. He quoted a guy from a movie. I think the movie was Wall Street. Never seen it, never even heard of it aside from this quote, but it's basically glorifying greed. Because people need to have that desire to want something to really push them forward. Which is, that's a totally logical thing. It is beneficial to have a society where you want things to own things. I'm kind of just talking in circles now. it's good to want things. It's understandable to want things. There isn't necessarily a problem inherently with that. Awesome. At least I don't think there is. I can definitely see the argument that there could be issues with that. After all, desire is supposedly the rot of the soul, and greed is a part of that. There is an argument and philosophies that wanting physical possessions is the active... this is an interesting one. Is actively the thing which makes the world so terrible. Right? And if we were all okay with just existing... Oh, no, we're fine. Never mind. If we were all okay with just existing, the world would be a whole lot better. Oh, I'm so stupid. Yes, that as well. Whatever. And I can definitely see that, but also there's a... Ooh, that's good for us. Still, if he just... Yeah, whatever. Cool. Now we're... Whatever. It's good to want things, as I just stated. It's not... I don't necessarily see it as a problem to inherently want things, right? To want that whatever it is, whether that's more food, more money, more security. To want things isn't bad. It pushes us to do great things, to get great heights, right? That itself isn't necessarily a problem, right? However, I believe we're all very familiar with the problems that greed creates, right? Greed on its own is such a potent problem because it doesn't end with a little bit. It never ends, actually. You never stop pressing the button to try and get more and more and more and more. You just keep going. It never really ends, right? There's never enough money. That's why I'm playing Buckshot Roulette. Because this is a game... I'm specifically playing the Double or Nothing version of it. Because it's the version where you are pushed to your limit to be like, all right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. At any point, you can walk away. At any point, you could stop, but you don't. And that's the important thing. Because you could keep getting more. Because what you have is never enough. And it never will be. Because it never can. Whenever what you want is more, you'll never have enough. You just won't. That's not how it works. Right? Isn't this a live round? And that's really tricky. Because then it's a question of like, okay, so I have... it's good to want things, but when is it too much? You know, the question of moderation is always going to be a prevalent one whenever it comes to things like this. To all of the 7 deadly sins. Moderation, because I guess none of them are inherently terrible within moderation, you know. Greed, for example, you need to have things to be happy. You know, you can be a nomad that just doesn't, you know, is so indifferent entirely to the world around them and material possessions. You can be that. That is, no one's going to stop you, right? But for most of us, that's not as inherent. Like, for people that have chronic illnesses, telling them, no, man, that's a crutch. That's a vice. You just need to be happy without it. Let's face it, it's way easier to be happy whenever you're comfortable. Whenever you have a house over your head, whenever you have food to eat, good food to eat, whenever you don't have to constantly be afraid or in pain, yeah. And if you're constantly giving things away, you don't have that capability. Whenever you're constantly giving things away, you're not likely to have that security. You're not likely to have the capability to be comfortable in the first place, right? And that's tough. That's really, really tough. But another tricky aspect of it, I suppose, is gotta be how whenever talking about greed and difficulties, it's difficult to combat it, because it's like, all right, so let's think. You have these... I might die here. That would be really embarrassing. Okay, I'm fine. You have different things, and what if yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. 3 and 2. To combat greed, some people try and do a Rasputin and be like, oh, to combat greed, what I'll do is I'll have more greed, right? That's how it works. Because, or like, if I have money so that the greedy people don't, then it's fine. I don't know if you guys know this. That's kind of stupid. But there is, I can kind of see it in the regard of like, listen, there are going to be people that have, like, we need to make sure that good people also have things, right? And so there's certain things that you need to do to have this autonomy, right? Because if everybody didn't care about having material possessions, but one person did, 99.99999% of, humanity does not, they're chilling, right? They're existing as they are, and that's totally fine with them. But one person wants to have more. One person is like, you know what? I don't want to sleep in a cave tonight, And then they go out, and I'm going to just use all of these. They go out, and they, make a house, or they make tools or something like that. Then that gives them the ability to use that power that they now have over other people. And then that makes other people gonna be like, okay, all right, well, then we also need to want more than just sleeping in caves, so that they, the bad people, don't have that jurisdiction over us, right? Basically saying that we can't just forgo greed entirely. That's not how it works. Am I gonna die here? It's a good question. No. Saved by the Bell again. You can't expect other people to be good for you. So you have to do it yourself. And if you're constantly giving away money, you can't really effectively do that, can you? You can't, because money makes money, right? And having a house makes having a house much easier, if you ask me. And so, I might die here. Okay. I still might die here. But, now it's, at least I did a little bit of damage to him. Oh, yeah, I'm going to die here. Whatever. There are a couple different instances of real-life greed, which is interesting. It's not interesting in the way of like, oh, whoa, people want things. It's... Are we for real right now? Wait, what is this guy doing? Okay, yeah, I should have seen that coming. All right. Let's keep going. Let her ride. As I was saying. I don't know what I was saying. Anyway, I guess I'll continue. People like Jeffrey Bezos and really, really rich people become famous and looked after and aspired towards, right? They're people of notoriety. But to some extent, there's someone... Well, I don't think I look up to them. But other people might. And the slippery slope that comes with greed is being like, all right, I'll have, just enough money to combat these people. I'll be greedy, but I'll be greedy for the right reason. But you're still being greedy. You can't effortlessly and effectively only, take money from bad people. That's not how that works, right? You're going to, one way or another, take it from someone else. And that's tricky. It's just tricky because maybe you want to do good, but you want to have power. But then the other problem is having power makes you want to have more. It never really stops. Some people can have good intentions, right? There's, I think Lenin. I'm not very familiar with the Russian Revolution, but I do understand that Lenin loved Russia. But the statement is that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that comes with greed. Whenever you get greed, it's never enough. As I stated earlier, it's more and more and more and more. Until eventually you have to be destructive. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's the only thing that can be, right? Instances are probably like John D. Rockefeller. Actually, here, let me take a breather and actually, yeah. One of the best examples or most anti-greed things I've ever heard, I guess, actually came from the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is not a good book, and the author of it is definitely greedy, and you should not listen to him. There's a part of it where he was genuinely like, yeah, you should scam people. It's their fault. Which is always the best. I'm always a big fan of whenever things, do that. But there was one part. So don't read the book. Just take away this one good part. If you do read it, just read it like online. Don't give him money. Above all else, do not give him money. Okay. I don't remember what I've done this turn already. Cool. He says, at least a part of it, I'm paraphrasing because I don't really want to remember a whole lot of that. I almost shot him. Wow. That would have been really silly of me. No. He says that whenever a big problem that people have whenever spending money and making more money and accruing wealth, I guess, of effectively being greedy, is that whenever you get more money, you tend to spend more money, right? It tends to kind of go with your spendings, right? But I guess actually now that I think about that, to think out loud, I guess that's not necessarily greed. I think I'll get to what that is later, at a later date. That's not greed, because what greed is imagine this, right? For me, greed is having food, right? Having so much food and starving to death because you're afraid, you don't want to eat it because you don't want to have less food, right? Because you want more. You want more food. And so you don't want to take away from it. You don't want anyone to take away from it, not even yourself, right? Greed is having more things. It's not necessarily having more money. It's more of having more stuff, right? I guess control, security, whatever you want to call it. It's having more of it. And so it's not necessarily consuming the things that you have, right? Because there's a funny joke that Jack Manifold, the Minecraft YouTuber, yeah, that one, I heard him say on, it was just, I think, a tweet response or something like that, where he asked someone to pay for him to buy him some merch or to buy him a ticket or something like that. And someone goes, "You're literally rich." And he says, didn't get that way by spending it. And that's totally real. People do not spend money whenever you have greed. That's the thing about rich people, is once you get to an extent of being rich, is it's just richness upon richness upon richness, where they just have money that makes money, but it's not enough money, so that they don't spend money because they've been got into this mindset of trying to get as much money as possible, and that includes them not spending it, right? There's I think I'll get into this more later, but okay, I died. So this is a pre-recorded message because I basically just ended it there. Something that I wanted to say before I ended the video is there's a quote from John D. Rockefeller, guy that I've talked about once or twice, and I'm probably going to talk about him a lot more. One of the richest industrialists ever to live, and he was a very, very prominent monopolist in the industrial era. One of the biggest reasons why we use oil so much nowadays. Apparently, whenever he was asked how much more money do you need, and he was worth like what is total $280 billion nowadays, right? How much more money do you need? His response was a little bit more, just a little bit more, and that is the destruction of greed, because it just you'll never ever have enough. If you keep chasing more, it will never, ever fill you. At least it doesn't seem like it does. Hope you guys have a good day. Bye.